Coquette, a term you have probably heard before, whether that be through TikTok trends, the Coquette streamer Queso, or Tumblr blogs. For the past couple of years, this delicate and sweet, feminine aesthetic has been unavoidable. And so have been the many disturbing things hiding just under the sheer lace nightgowns and silky dresses. A scandal that banned an entire community off of Tumblr, a controversial novel still sparking outrage to this very day, French films, the K-pop it girl, and one of the most popular singers of our time. All of these things have contributed to the rise of Coquette. But will they cause its downfall? My name is Juno, your local Mothman. Welcome back to my channel. Or if this video is popping your Juno Moth cherry, welcome, I'm happy you found me. If you enjoy this video, please consider subscribing since I really want to reach 20k subscribers before New Year's Eve. And in this series, we take a look at internet aesthetics and try to discover their hidden meanings and themes. From the often misunderstood weirdcore to the many controversies of cottagecore and traumacore, we talk about it all. And in this video, we will take an intimate look at the subtly woven delusions of Coquette, how one woman made it what it is today, why this painting is actually the key to understanding it, and why we need to pay attention to what young girls do on the internet. And before we continue, on the screen right now you can see all of the different content warnings for this video. If you don't want to deal with that, I understand. You can watch my much lighter video about kidcore instead if you'd like to. Now, let's go back in time to 2010 and talk about the woman that started it all, Miss Cherry Cola herself. This is Lizzy Grant. She is 25 years old when she releases her debut album under the name of Lana Del Rey. She doesn't yet know that she is about to change the sad girl music scene forever. Lana Del Rey, aka Lizzy Grant, is an album filled with grit, melancholy and ponderings about life, death and longing. The album is painfully American, with the third song of the album being titled after a lyric from the USA national anthem, the fourth spelling out A-M-E-R-I-C-A, all I wanna do is play, and in a later one she calls herself Miss America. Lana tells us a story of a young woman struggling to find her footing in a fast-paced world, surrounded by drugs, sex, and existential dread. Filled with references to vintage Americana and odes to various musical acts, Del Rey from the get-go was building a strong artistic foundation that would continue to carry her through any turbulence on her way of becoming the musical embodiment of girlhood. A girlhood that is beautiful, sweet, and innocent. These themes sonically came together especially well with a song titled Put Me in a Movie, which we will have to go back to, since you'll soon realize that every single thing we're going to be talking about in this video can be traced back to this debut album. No matter how unrelated it seems, everything always goes back to Lana Del Rey. And in a cruel twist of fate, this album is no longer available. Lana pulled it off air in 2012, and since then the only way to listen to it is through fan reposts and bootleg eBay CDs. However, the themes she touches on in her music didn't go anywhere, and as Lana grew, so did her audience, and with time, Lana Del Rey became one of the biggest acts in pop music at the time. But why did she become the face of female angst? And what does she have to do with Coquette? Well, have you ever heard of the movie Virgin Suicides? If not, no worries, we'll talk about it in time, since it's one of the most important movies in Coquette circles. You cannot look through the Coquette tag without seeing Lux or Cecilia pop up. And if right now you go to watch Virgin Suicides edits on TikTok or YouTube, you will find that most of them are done to Lana's music. This is what Makes Us Girls sings Lana in the background of an edit I watched, and I thought, of course they do edits to her songs since Coppola's movie looks like an early Lana Del Rey music video. because one of Lana's driving forces are her aesthetics. Lana is an insanely beautiful woman, a woman that understands what she is trying to say and is capable of showcasing that well. She always seems effortless in her vintage white dresses with her dark, thick hair cascading down her shoulders. She's always alone, looking at us with half-lidded eyes, almost as if asking what we will do to her now that we have her all to ourselves. She wears vintage dresses, bows in her hair, and daring shoes, a modern Madonna or an American whore. She makes herself be both, with subtle jewelry and carefully planned out makeup looks. Purity and sex appeal. What a rare combo. If you, like me, grew up with Christianity, you might have been led to believe that such a state of things is unachievable, and yet, their red cherries, flowy silky white dresses, and pink bows beg to differ. She's mature in her looks, but somehow always a bit playful, adorning a gorgeous dress, but keeping her feet bare and wearing those heart-shaped glasses. I wonder what that's a reference to. This blend of innocence, melancholy, and seduction is incredibly appealing, especially to young women that are the driving force of popular culture. And who wouldn't love Coquette's vintage hyper-feminine styles, the sheer and lace fabrics, the adorable vintage patterns, the dusty pinks, the cherry reds, the delicate pastels. Coquettes look like the embodiment of 50s pin-up girls with an innocent twist. Little angels just as playful as they are naive, their white clothes proof of their purity. Who wouldn't love seeing such beautiful young girls on their feed? Who would constantly want to see them? Who wouldn't love the edits and slow-paced TikToks, collages, and mood boards, all paying homage to Lana's songs about love and devotion, fame and substance and suicide ideation, and having sex with much older men? Who wouldn't love to see a girl so small that you cannot tell how old she is, posting herself in her lingerie with the hashtag Coquette, hashtag this is what makes us girls, hashtag hell is a teenage girl? Who wouldn't love the aesthetics of girls so thin and small they look like they need medical intervention, but instead they pose seductively, waiting for you to take in their emancipated beauty while they sell you a fad diet? Who wouldn't love the aesthetics of an underage girl, ripe for taking, a sexual teenager, looking longingly past her eyelashes at you? A freshly bloomed flower, not yet dirtied by the cruel world. A flower that is swaying gently in the wind, beautiful, and waiting for you to pick it up, rip all of its petals off, and then discard it back to the ground with an apathetic flick of your wrist. Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary friends, grab your shovels, because we're digging up a long-dead Russian novelist. When Vladimir Nabokov finished writing Lolita in 1954, he warned publishers to never put an image of a girl on the cover, as that would diminish the meaning and impact of the story. So, of course, most of the published versions of the book do have a girl on the cover. A girl looking seductively at us while licking a lollipop or eating ice cream. A young girl's legs, a young girl's naked body. All of this to entice and excite you into reading a story about how a 12-year-old girl gets groomed by an insane man that was supposed to be a father figure to her. Hey Lolita hey, sings Lana Del Rey as Nabokov turns in his grave. If you've been on the internet for any amount of time, at a certain point you probably stumbled across some kind of discourse surrounding Nabokov's novel and its impact on popular culture. I, however, don't blame Nabokov's novel, as I've seen some do, for the Lolita craze. For that, we have the land of endless opportunities and stolen dreams. Hollywood. The same Hollywood that in 1978 watched as 13-year-old Brooke Shields act out scenes as a child prostitute. Brooke Shields that was described by a photographer that photographed her nude for a Playboy spin-off magazine as a young vamp and a harlot, a seasoned sexual veteran, a provocative child woman, an erotic and sensual sex symbol, the Lolita of her generation. So it's not surprising that Lolita, a story of a man's delusion, was by Hollywood turned into an aesthetically pleasing dark love story with the 2 movie adaptations they created. The aesthetics of these movies have left a lasting impact on our culture, for better or for worse, and have inspired fashion trends like Coquette. The popularity of Lolita's aesthetics and the complete trampling over the novel's message is hilarious in a tragi-comedic way. Nobokov wrote Lolita not because he wanted to vicariously live through Humbert, but because he was a victim himself. When Vladimir was 8 years old, his uncle started to him. This went on for years. There are many parallels between Nabokov's childhood experiences and Lolita's story, especially the ending. With this additional context, Nabokov's work being so wildly misinterpreted and later commercialized as a pro-pedophilia manifesto is heartbreaking to me. Lolita in pop culture is a being divorced from reality, the reality of CSA and the reality of Nabokov's novel. Dolores has been forgotten, and then Nymphette, the hallucinated version of her that Humbert called Lolita, has been commercialized, turned into a cultural icon and a sex symbol. And out of Humbert's delusions that Hollywood leaned into sexualizing the young actresses playing Dolores, an aesthetic was born. An aesthetic based in vintage Americana, girlhood and sex. An aesthetic that was the direct precursor of Coquette. Let's talk about Tumblr's 2010s Nymphette obsession. Put Me in a Movie is my favorite song from Lana Del Rey's debut album. It's a song that sends chills down my spine and makes me want to cry due to its subject matter. And so, it's a complete and utter whiplash to see fashion inspiration TikToks to this song. As the narrator of the song tells us how the man she's singing about drugged her and took her home because he likes good little girls, you can get recommendations for cute Coquette tops or questionable couples TikToks. And next to the Coquette tag, 2 other tags appear, Lolita and Nymphette, although both of these tags usually get abbreviated to avoid bans on both of these terms. But back in the 2010s, there were no such bans, and the Nymphette community was an ever-growing hub for people that like the aesthetics of young girls, especially tragically abused young girls, sexually attractive young girls, as the name suggests. I'm not gonna lie to you, while doing research for this video, I have seen so much stuff that left me just speechless and feeling as if I'm insane. I felt like I was crazy for feeling so uncomfortable. Usually when something makes us uncomfortable, it doesn't immediately mean that it is wrong or evil or whatever, but this time I believe that my discomfort is well-founded, because it stems from minors being involved in the Nymphette aesthetic, both because there were and are actual minors that would post and engage with fetish content at an age where that wasn't appropriate, and because said minors are actively being fetishized. And I know that a lot of people don't see the fetishy aspects of enjoying a certain clothing style, and I'm not claiming here that wearing milk braids and pastel clothes makes you a pedophile. But rather, I'm trying to explain that all of these different visual elements and fashion choices stem directly from content made via exploitation. I understand that for most of the adult women enjoying the Nymphette/Lolita roleplay, this is a fantasy, and that a big chunk of people simply enjoy that specific vintage look. Still, I don't like how this fantasy bleeds into reality. The most popular movies that Nymphettes would make GIFs and mood boards from had real teenage actresses being exploited. At the time the movies were created, their cultural impact only reassured the older generations that were desensitized to pedophilia that this kind of sexualization of teenage girls was normal and okay. The impact of doing aesthetic/aspirational content from those movies nowadays is pretty much the same. The Nymphette community started to seriously blend the lines between fantasy and self-expression, consensual stuff between adults, to straight up sharing CP at times. I don't think I'm being too sensitive if I think that posting a gif of a 12-year-old Natalie Portman from Leon the Professional with a DDLG tag is inappropriate at the very least. And such a community in which there were many young girls was incredibly easy to target, and that's exactly what happened. I cannot find any direct sources about happening, but such stories kept coming up in discussions on Nymphette during my research. I heard that because the community was the way it was essentially a honeypot for creeps. Once again, I cannot find sources, and so I'm just sharing what I've heard, and I've heard of grooming and CP being extorted from underage girls happening within the community. To sum it all up, Nymphette is/was an aesthetic that is focused on being the object of an older man's lust. The age gap and the woman's or girl's youthfulness are fetishized, and the sex appeal is at the centerpiece of the aesthetic. It's not a surprise that Tumblr axed it. And so when the purge happened, NSFW blogs got taken down, and alongside them many Nymphette blogs were lost too. And after that, #Nymphette as well as #Lolita were banned. So the community rebranded, using names such as Dolette, Lolita, and you've guessed it, Coquette. This entire earlier part of the video was put in not only because this video is about Coquette's origins, but also because I'm trying to show you how interwoven these aesthetic communities still are. You can't really enjoy Coquette without stumbling across much more troubling content. What exactly you'll find will depend on the platform. If you go looking for Coquette on Tumblr, you'll go down the female manipulator, bed-rotting, Nymphette, wife, kink route. If you go to Pinterest, you'll find a mixture of aesthetic pictures and fashion, as well as some Lolita whisper text posts. On TikTok, they will try to sell you stuff, whether that be clothes or makeup or diet plans. And the last part, as sad as it is, isn't surprising to me. This aesthetic is a perfect place to find so-called thinspo. Recently, our culture has shifted once again towards being skinny as the ultimate sign of beauty and status, although thin was never really out. Current climate is once again pushing for the unhealthy thinness of the 90s. Heroin chic is back in full swing. Apparently, it's been long enough that the younger generations can idolize and lust over a body standard that has killed many, since they cannot remember those deaths happening. And in this newfound obsession over weight, a new industry has been steadily growing, the K-pop industry. And it's crazy how quickly the zeitgeist changes, because I remember the days before K-pop was as mainstream as it is nowadays, when K-Twitter and international fans would be incredibly worried about these K-pop idols' weights and unhealthy diets. But nowadays, those unhealthy bodies are body goals. Of course, the K-pop beauty standard was always aspirational to international fans, and following K-pop diets has been a long-running trend, especially on YouTube. But I think that recently, in the past 2 years or so, it's reached a new high. Like, I can pretty confidently say that there is a new K-pop stan to pro-Anna pipeline. And I'm bringing K-pop up because of one woman that changed the game, Jang Won-young of IVE. Won-youngism is a branch of Coquette centered around embodying Jang Won-young. From her effortless beauty to her incredible talents and fashion sense, K-pop fans are obsessed with being like Wonnie, and that is scary to me. I am not Won-young's friend. I don't feel comfortable commenting on the body of a stranger. I think that Wonnie is beautiful and an incredibly talented performer and songwriter, but I am worried that so many young girls aspire to look like her, as it is not, in my personal opinion, achievable in a healthy and sustainable way. Delicate like a flower in her flowy dresses, childlike in her mannerisms, classy and elegant with long limbs and a face of a porcelain doll. So thin that it's caused public discourse multiple times. Discourse that most of the time leads the public to either being incredibly cruel to this young woman that's been mistreated since childhood, or praise. In an industry where EDs are the standard, Wonyoung is the perfect idol. And as someone that has had their fair share of ED adventures, the rising normalization and romanticization of EDs amongst teens is worrying. I worry what kind of repercussions aestheticizing the look of an emancipated woman, like some of the Coquette branches do, will bring us. That being said, some of you might have been watching this video while having no experiences with Coquette or Proana or Nymphettes, and be wondering, why? In The Virgin Suicides, a film by Sofia Coppola, the titular virgins never get to be anything other than that. They are not people outside of the perception of the male characters through whom we learn of their stories. And because of that, these teen girls are presented almost as myths or fantastical creatures rather than human beings. I believe that this portrayal speaks to young teenage girls and their experiences. A lot of teenage girls seem to be obsessed with their own tragic existence. And I get it, I truly do. Hell is a teenage girl. I don't know how many of you older audience members remember being a teenager. I still do. I was one not so long ago. And I still remember the anguish, the rage, the constant fear and anxiety of that age. This transition period is one of the most terrifyingly exciting times in one's life. There are so many promises and ideas that are born while you're growing up, and when you finally hit that magical age of adulthood, it's equally as thrilling as it is anxiety-inducing. And when I was a teen, I watched the girls in high school dating men in their late 20s and early 30s, and nobody batted an eye. Not the teachers, not the parents. So nothing illegal happened, but now as an adult I can't help but shudder at the thought of my teenage younger sister being in a relationship with someone so much older than her. I talked with my mom once and she asked me what was wrong about young women dating much older men, and that made me realize that this kind of knowledge we have now about power dynamics and coercion, grooming, are only now being talked about. Just look at all the discourse surrounding Billie Eilish dating choices, or Aaron Taylor Johnson's marriage. And obviously the internet discourse is always built in a way to be as controversial as possible, so there are people that try to pathologize any and all age gaps, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about extortion and abuse of minors and adolescents. In our cultures, this obsession with young girls, girlhood, and childlike innocence is quite prevalent. After all, the other side of the young virgin Madonna is the old used-up whore. So is it really that surprising that young women and girls are attracted to and interested in this kind of feminine aesthetics? I think there is something very comforting about sticking to childhood aesthetics. That's why kidcore is so popular. It's just such a shame that traditionally feminine things and girlhood as a whole is so fetishized. This conflicting reality of femininity and girlhood where your innocence is taken away and twisted until it becomes a sexual quality causes these young women to cling to their youth. And the sexuality of young women and teenagers isn't the problem here. These young women are developing, and alongside them their sexual side is as well. People don't just turn 18 and suddenly become sexual. the issue lies in how that sexuality is often exploited. With Coquette, I believe that teens and young adults are looking for ways to mend the gap, to embrace girlhood and their newfound growing sexual maturity. I think that underneath all of the Coquette-esque aesthetics, there is this sense of urgency. This belief that time is running out and that young adulthood is the last time you'll ever have a chance to be this sweet, this innocent, this playful, this sexual with plausible deniability. Women are raised to take up slack. Because of that, even at a ripe age, these girls are essentially already treated like little adults. I think that visually wanting to go back to childhood might also come from a need to say, hey, I am still incredibly young, I have no idea what I'm doing, I am so delicate and sensitive right now, and I just wish someone would take care of me. But this visual return to girlhood is also why there is such a strong overlap with pro-Ana circles, since the goal of restrictive EDs is to lose weight and be as small as possible, and thinness is inherently connected to girlhood. How often do you see a coquette that has a body type of an average, sexually mature woman with wider hips and a higher fat percentage? Incredibly rarely, right? This video isn't a slam dunk on Coquette. It's an analysis, and as we're gearing towards our conclusion, I want you to remember that no matter what I say, you are entitled to your own opinion. I reference this painting by Charles Aimable Lenoir from the 1900s in the intro of this video by saying that it's the key to understanding Coquette, and I stand by that opinion. In the intro, this painting did not look bad, but now, after we know what we do, let's look at it again. This painting is actually not the only one of its kind. Paintings of little girls with cherries have been an artistic trend for quite some time. And the reason for that lies in the symbolism of cherries. They are the fruit representing many things, all having to do with sex. Outside of the more visual similarity to various body parts, the most popular symbolism is that of virginity. Popping one's cherry refers to breaking of a woman's vaginal membrane. And now, looking at these paintings of children with cherries, looking playfully at the audience in their white clothes, the implications are unsettling. And that's how I feel about Coquette. In a bubble, I really like it. I personally really like feminine aesthetics, and Coquette hits that spot for me where I almost want to give into the fantasy. But I don't live in a bubble. I am a strong believer in the saying that many things can be true at once, and I believe this fully applies to Coquette. Essentially, we're culturally at a standstill. About a decade ago, Nymphette got recognized for its unsavory parts. However, since then, the societal ideal of feminine beauty hasn't changed. So Coquette is currently a very packed term. It's just a fun expression of self, a fashion statement, a reclamation of childlike innocence, a pro-Ana gateway, an exploration of kink, and a pedal's wet dream. The Coquette is the perfect version of a young woman. She's pure yet ripe for taking, flirtatious and sensual but demure. She's not risque and worryingly vulnerable like the Nymphette. She's not shattered and cruel to herself and other women like the wives, and she's not openly vulgar like cherry emoji Twitter of the femme fatales. She's perfect, not too young but still young, ripe and waiting for you to pick her up. It would be delusional of me to demand we find some way to change Coquette so that it is completely divorced from the implications. It is not possible. And so, if you enjoy Coquette, continue doing so. Have fun, express yourself however you'd like to, but be vigilant. If you notice that your For You pages start to promote more and more diet and body checking videos, take a step back. If you see people behaving inappropriately, call them out, block, report, and move on. And definitely let me know what you think. Thank you for watching this video to the end. consider subscribing if you enjoyed it. As always, thank you to my Patreons, and speaking of my Patreon, you can join it for $1.50 to get access to a bunch of cool content and join our conversations about future videos. Until my next video, you can watch my aesthetic deep dives playlist or check out this video I worked really hard on. I'll see you guys soon. Bye bye!